Hello and welcome to Journey Through Time, where curiosity meets calm and the story of our planet unfolds gently. Tonight, we'll explore the Cenozoic, the age of mammals, a 66 million year journey of rebirth after the dinosaurs vanished. This age saw mammals emerge from the shadows, forests stretch across continents, oceans transform, climates swing between heat and ice, and, at the very end, the rise of humanity. As you listen, imagine the ground beneath your feet still carrying traces of this era, rocks laid down by ancient seas, fossils of vanished creatures, and the air echoing with changes millions of years in the making. In this opening chapter, we step into a world recovering from disaster, where small survivors became the architects of a new Earth. The Cenozoic began with silence after the asteroid impact near the Yucatan Peninsula 66 million years ago. Giant reptiles were gone, and countless other species disappeared, leaving space for survivors to thrive. Forests spread over warm continents, small mammals darted through undergrowth, birds descended from dinosaurs flourished, crocodiles and turtles persisted, and oceans began to refill with new life. The first epoch, the Paleocene, was warm and humid. Palm trees grew in Greenland, broadleaf forests covered Alaska. Mammals diversified rapidly, experimenting with new forms. Early primates appeared with grasping hands and forward-facing eyes, while in the oceans, sharks continued their reign, and early whales began their slow evolution from land animals to ocean giants. This was a planet of constant adjustment, where survival meant flexibility and innovation. Imagine Earth as a greenhouse garden, lush, humid, and strange, its continents drifting, mountains rising, and seas reshaping their chemistry. This was not a stable age, but a laboratory of evolution. As the Paleocene progressed, Earth was a world of forests, swamps, and warm seas. Mammals, once small nocturnal creatures, began to grow larger and explore new ecological roles. Multituberculates with rodent-like gnawing teeth filled niches from tree dwellers to semi-aquatic swimmers. Pantodonts became some of the first truly large herbivores, clumsy yet pioneering giants, browsing on soft vegetation. Early primates evolved in dense canopies, their grasping hands and forward-facing eyes preparing them for a future none could foresee. The predators were not yet cats or dogs, but creodonts, powerful carnivores with jaws built for slicing flesh. Birds flourished too, some evolving into enormous flightless forms, terror birds, in South America, while smaller species filled the skies and forest floors. Oceans mirrored this dynamism. Sharks dominated, bony fish diversified, and the earliest whale ancestors still walked on land while venturing into rivers and coastal shallows. During the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, about 55 million years ago, greenhouse gases surged and temperatures spiked. Tropical forests reached the poles, crocodiles swam in the Arctic, and mammals migrated across continents as new routes opened. Many lineages became smaller to cope with heat and scarce nutrients. Tiny horses and primates spread widely. The event acted like an evolutionary accelerator, launching groups that would later dominate the Cenozoic. By the Eocene, mammals radiated into experimental forms. Bats took flight at night, whales committed fully to the oceans, and primates expanded in diversity. Hoofed mammals developed new teeth for grinding tougher plants, and predators adapted to new prey. Continents drifted. India's collision with Asia raised the Himalayas, altering global climate. South America and Australia remained isolated, evolving unique faunas, giant sloths, armored glyptodonts, marsupial predators, and kangaroo ancestors. Forests blanketed much of the world, dense canopies humming with insects, birds, and small mammals. This green planet regulated its own climate, pulling carbon into soils and swamps, but it also demanded constant adaptation. Ambush predators lurked in the shadows, diseases thrived in the humidity, and competition was fierce. Yet it was a time of opportunity. Mammals refined parental care, complex social behaviors, and diverse diets, traits that would help them weather future upheavals. As the Eocene unfolded, the Earth reached one of its warmest periods. Forests extended almost to the poles, creating a nearly continuous green canopy. In this hothouse world, flowering plants and pollinating insects deepened their partnerships. Mammals evolved new ways of feeding, moving, and socializing, and oceans teemed with creatures adapting to warmer, more acidic waters. Early whales, such as Ambulocetus, swam like crocodiles, but still walked clumsily on land, while later forms like Basilosaurus became fully marine, their vestigial hind limbs a ghost of terrestrial ancestry. Bats perfected echolocation and winged flight, filling the night skies with agile insect hunters. Primates diversified further, from tiny lemur-like species to early anthropoids with larger brains and more complex social behaviors. This was also a time of geographic reshaping. India's collision with Asia raised the Himalayas, altering atmospheric circulation and monsoons. Antarctica drifted south and, as seaways opened, circumpolar currents began forming, precursors to the ice sheets that would later cover the continent. South America remained an isolated evolutionary laboratory, producing terror birds, giant rodents, and sloth ancestors. Australia moved away from Antarctica, becoming dominated by marsupials and monotremes. Each continent was like a separate stage where evolution ran its own experiments. The Eocene warmth peaked with the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, but then began a slow decline. As climates cooled, forests started to retreat from high latitudes, and seasonality increased. This shift opened opportunities for new ecosystems. Grass-like plants appeared more frequently, and open habitats became more common, foreshadowing the grasslands to come. Mammals adapted in step. Herbivores developed tougher teeth. Predators grew faster and stealthier. Primates explored new niches. Fossils show migration events, body size shifts, and rapid evolutionary turnover in response to these climate swings. Even in this lush world, life was not static. Each species lived in its own present, unaware of future ice ages or grassland expansions. Horses were still dog-sized forest browsers. Elephants had odd shovel-like jaws or multiple tusks. Apes had not yet appeared. Yet all of them were part of a grand reshaping that would eventually produce the familiar fauna of today. The Cenozoic was a rolling experiment, blending resilience, innovation, and chance. By the late Eocene and into the Oligocene, the greenhouse Earth began tilting toward cooler, drier conditions. Forests that had wrapped the planet started to thin in continental interiors, and open habitats emerged where trees had once dominated. Grasses, long minor players, began spreading into patches that would later coalesce into vast grasslands. This transition marked one of the great ecological revolutions of the Cenozoic, the rise of grazing mammals and the open plains that shaped their evolution. Herbivores adapted to the challenge of abrasive grasses rich in silica. High-crowned teeth, Hypsodonti, evolved independently in several lineages, from early horses to rhinoceroses and antelope ancestors, allowing them to grind tough vegetation without wearing out their jaws. Body plans shifted toward longer limbs and lighter frames, built for running rather than climbing. Herding behavior became more common, offering safety in numbers on exposed plains. Migration patterns emerged as animals followed seasonal rains and fresh growth across continents. Predators evolved in parallel. The creodonts that had ruled for tens of millions of years gave way to modern carnivorans, early cats, dogs, hyenas, and bear ancestors, each refining tactics for open country hunting. Speed, endurance, and cooperation replaced forest ambush as key survival strategies. Pack hunting evolved in dog-like carnivores, while cats honed stealth and explosive acceleration. The predator-prey arms race accelerated in the grasslands. South America remained a separate evolutionary arena until much later. Here, giant rodents, hoofed mammals unrelated to Old World species, and terror birds dominated open habitats. Australia's marsupial predators and herbivores expanded into new niches as the continent dried. These isolated experiments produced bizarre and spectacular forms. Armored glyptodonts the size of cars, sloths as big as elephants, and marsupial lions with slicing teeth. Only when land bridges formed millions of years later did Old World species flood in, transforming these unique ecosystems. The spread of grasslands also reshaped Earth's geochemical cycles. Deep grass roots stabilized soils and stored carbon underground, contributing to global cooling. As forests pulled back, atmospheric CO2 declined, reinforcing the shift to cooler climates, and eventually, ice formation at the poles. Antarctica's isolation and the opening of the Drake Passage allowed circumpolar currents to develop fully, plunging the southern continent into a deep freeze and initiating the first major ice sheets of the Cenozoic. Through the Miocene, roughly 20 million years ago, grasslands reached their full stride. Horses diversified into dozens of forms, some small and forest-adapted, others tall, swift grazers. Antelope and bovid ancestors spread across Eurasia and Africa. Camels thrived in North America before dispersing to Asia. Rhinoceroses reached both giant and bizarre proportions. Elephants, once small pig-like creatures, evolved into tusked behemoths. This explosion of diversity was matched by an equally rich predator guild and a growing complexity of social behaviors in both hunters and prey. Even as grasslands expanded, forests did not vanish completely. Tropical belts remained rich refuges, harboring lineages of primates and other tree-dependent species. But the new mosaic of habitats, forest patches interspersed with open plains, created new evolutionary pressures. For primates, this gradual opening of the landscape would, much later, shape the evolution of upright walking and larger brains in our own lineage. The Cenozoic at this stage was a planet of contrasts, ice forming at one pole, lush rainforests near the equator, endless grasslands in between. It was a world in motion, climates swinging, continents drifting, and life responding with innovation after innovation. From whales in the oceans to bats in the night sky, from tiny rodents to towering rhinos, mammals had become the defining force of terrestrial ecosystems, weaving themselves into every niche opened by the planet's ongoing transformation. During the Miocene and into the Pliocene, Earth's landscapes became increasingly recognizable to us today. Grasslands and savannas dominated continental interiors, ice expanded at the poles, and coastlines shifted as sea levels rose and fell. The great mountain ranges of the world, the Andes, the Rockies, the Himalayas, continued to rise, altering wind and rainfall patterns, creating rain shadows, and reshaping ecosystems below. These tectonic changes combined with shifts in ocean currents to reinforce cooler, more seasonal climates. Mammals responded with a burst of diversification. Herds of grazers, horses, antelope, camels, and early elephants spread across open country. Predators evolved into familiar forms. Saber-toothed cats honed their elongated canines for ambush, while dog-like carnivores developed pack-hunting strategies. Rodents flourished in burrows beneath the grasses, and primates in some regions began adapting to more open, mixed habitats. South America, still isolated until the late Cenozoic, remained home to its unique giants. Terror birds, giant sloths, armored glyptodonts, while its predators included marsupial lions, unlike anything in the Northern Hemisphere. Australia continued its marsupial experiment with giant kangaroo ancestors and carnivorous thylacines. These continental laboratories underscored how geography shaped evolution, producing parallel solutions to similar ecological challenges. The oceans, too, reflected this transformation. Whales, which had begun as land mammals millions of years earlier, had now fully diversified into the great filter-feeding baleen whales and the toothed whales, including ancestors of dolphins and orcas. Warm currents fed plankton blooms that supported immense schools of fish and the growing marine mammal population. Giant sharks, including megalodon, prowled these seas, preying on whales and demonstrating the enduring power of apex predators, even in a mammal-dominated ocean. Coral reefs expanded and contracted with changing sea levels, serving as nurseries for countless marine species. Climate change continued as a driver. The formation of the Isthmus of Panama, around 3 million years ago, altered global ocean currents, intensifying the Gulf Stream and contributing to Northern Hemisphere glaciation. Ice sheets grew, sea levels dropped, and environments became more variable. In Africa, the gradual expansion of grasslands and the retreat of dense forests set the stage for profound changes in the primate lineage, encouraging bipedalism and more complex social structures in some groups. By the Pliocene, recognizable modern ecosystems had emerged. Grazing mammals dominated vast open areas. Carnivores refined their hunting strategies, and birds, insects, and plants all adapted to the new rhythms of a cooler, more seasonal planet. This was the world in which many of today's animal families reached something close to their modern forms, though with striking differences in size and distribution. The diversity of life reflected not a steady march, but a continual negotiation with shifting climates, changing landscapes, and the relentless push of evolution. This period also saw the beginnings of ice ages. Glaciers advanced and retreated in cycles, carving valleys, depositing sediments, and reshaping coastlines. Each pulse of ice reconfigured habitats, driving migrations, extinctions, and innovations. Mammals grew thicker coats, stored more fat, or migrated to survive. Others perished, their niches opening for new arrivals. These fluctuations would culminate in the Pleistocene, when ice, humans, and megafauna would share the stage. By the Pleistocene, the Cenozoic had entered its final great act, the Ice Age cycles. Over the last 2.6 million years, Earth oscillated between glacial periods, when massive ice sheets advanced over North America, Europe, and Asia, and interglacials, when climates warmed and ice retreated. These shifts dramatically reconfigured coastlines, river systems, and ecosystems, pushing species to adapt or perish. Sea levels rose and fell by over 100 meters, exposing land bridges such as Beringia between Asia and North America, allowing migrations of humans and animals alike. The megafauna of this age was extraordinary. Mammoths and mastodons grazed steppe tundras. Woolly rhinoceroses and giant ground sloths roamed plains and forests. Saber-toothed cats and short-faced bears hunted across continents. North America saw herds of bison and horses. South America harbored glyptodonts and toxodonts. Australia sustained giant marsupial herbivores and fierce predators like the marsupial lion. These giants were evolutionary responses to the challenges of cold climates, open landscapes, and seasonal scarcity. Humans appeared as part of this changing scene. Our earliest ancestors evolved in Africa, as forests gave way to savannas, adapting to upright walking, tool use, and larger brains. By the later Pleistocene, Homo sapiens and their relatives were spreading across the globe, following game, foraging plants, and shaping ecosystems through fire and hunting. This was the culmination of trends begun tens of millions of years earlier. Primates in trees developing grasping hands, complex social structures, and versatile diets, now expressed in a lineage capable of reshaping the planet itself. Ice Age environments fostered rapid innovation. Animals developed thick fur, hibernation strategies, or migratory patterns to cope with cold. Plants adapted to short-growing seasons and permafrost soils. Humans invented clothing, shelters, and cooperative hunting techniques. When ice retreated, new corridors opened, populations expanded, and gene flow reshaped species' genetic diversity. Each glacial cycle was like a reset button for ecosystems, keeping evolution in constant motion. As glaciers advanced, massive amounts of water were locked into ice, exposing continental shelves and creating land bridges. Species crossed between continents, mammoths and bison between Asia and North America, camels and horses going the other way, and humans following game into new territories. When the ice melted, rising seas isolated populations again, promoting divergence and sometimes extinction. This geographic dynamism produced the modern biogeographic patterns we see today. The end of the Pleistocene brought another wave of extinctions, particularly of megafauna. A combination of climate warming and human hunting likely drove many large mammals to extinction within a few thousand years. Mammoths, mastodons, saber-toothed cats, giant sloths, and countless others vanished. Smaller, more adaptable animals survived, as they had at the end of the Cretaceous. The Cenozoic's story of resilience and reinvention came full circle. Once again, dramatic environmental change opened niches and forced new adaptations. By the Holocene, the epoch we live in now, the Cenozoic had delivered the modern world. Forests, grasslands, deserts, and tundras settled into familiar distributions. Oceans stabilized their currents. Ice retreated to the poles. Humans domesticated plants and animals, built cities, and began altering landscapes at a global scale. Yet beneath our feet, and in our DNA, lies the legacy of the Cenozoic, the forests that nurtured early primates, the grasslands that shaped mammalian speed and endurance, the ice ages that forged resilience and ingenuity. As the Holocene dawned roughly 11,700 years ago, the last ice age retreated and Earth settled into a relatively stable climate. This new stability allowed plants, animals, and humans to flourish in ways impossible during the rapid swings of the Pleistocene. Forests expanded again into areas once covered by ice. Grasslands shifted, and coastlines redrew themselves as sea levels rose more than 100 meters. Large inland seas formed and then shrank, shaping migration routes and ecosystems alike. Humans, now widespread across all continents except Antarctica, began to profoundly alter the landscape. Hunter-gatherer societies transitioned to agriculture, domesticating plants and animals first in fertile river valleys, then across diverse regions. This transformation created permanent settlements, leading to villages, towns, and the first cities. With agriculture came surplus, specialization, and the seeds of complex societies. By altering fire regimes, clearing forests, and redirecting water, humans became a geologic force, accelerating changes in soil, vegetation, and animal populations. Many of the great Ice Age megafauna had already disappeared, but smaller mammals adapted to human presence and new habitats. Wolves became domestic dogs, cattle emerged from wild aurochs, and cats, goats, and horses were drawn into partnership with people. These domestications echoed the survival strategies of the Cenozoic: flexibility, adaptability, and resilience, but now under deliberate human selection rather than natural pressures. The Holocene also saw the stabilization of ocean currents and climate patterns that underpin modern ecosystems. Coral reefs grew in warm seas, supporting vast biodiversity. Migratory birds established roots across continents. Insect pollinators adapted to human-shaped landscapes. Yet human expansion also fragmented habitats, introduced invasive species, and triggered new extinction pressures, echoing the upheavals of past mass changes, but now driven by one species. By looking at this moment in the context of the entire Cenozoic, we can see the continuity. The rise of mammals after the asteroid impact, the evolution of grasslands, the Ice Age cycles, and the spread of humans all form a single arc of resilience and transformation. We are living in the latest chapter of a 66-million-year story still unfolding beneath our feet. Looking at the full sweep of the Cenozoic from our vantage point in the present, we see patterns that repeat across time. Climate pulses, evolutionary bursts, and the interplay of geography and life. The continents, now in roughly their modern positions, still drift at a few centimeters a year, slowly reshaping currents, coastlines, and mountain ranges. These gradual shifts influence ecosystems just as surely as the asteroid impact once did, only on a slower, subtler scale. Modern biodiversity carries the imprint of the age of mammals. Rodents, bats, primates, ungulates, and carnivorans, all lineages that diversified early in the Cenozoic, still dominate the planet's vertebrate landscape. Birds, descendants of the surviving dinosaurs, have also reached extraordinary diversity, filling niches from the deepest oceans to the highest mountains. Flowering plants remain the backbone of terrestrial ecosystems, their partnership with pollinators as vital, now as in the Paleocene forests. Even our oceans bear the legacy of the early whale experiments. Blue whales today are direct inheritors of the transitions begun by amphibious ancestors in shallow seas 50 million years ago. The Cenozoic also shaped the chemical and atmospheric composition of Earth. Weathering of newly uplifted mountain ranges drew carbon dioxide from the air, cooling the planet. Grassland soils sequestered vast amounts of carbon underground. Ice locked up water at the poles, changing ocean salinity and currents. These processes stabilized climate enough for human civilizations to develop, but they also serve as reminders that Earth's systems are dynamic, capable of shifting into very different states given the right triggers. Humans, though a late arrival, have become agents of a new transformation. In just a few thousand years, we have moved species across continents, altered nitrogen cycles, changed the chemistry of oceans and atmosphere, and now drive a new pulse of warming reminiscent of ancient greenhouse spikes. This makes the lessons of the Cenozoic especially relevant. Rapid climate change stresses ecosystems, triggers migrations, and reshapes the evolutionary path of life. The fossil record of this era shows both resilience and vulnerability, a blueprint for understanding our own time. If you could travel back to any point in the Cenozoic, each epoch would feel like its own alien, yet familiar planet. In the Paleocene, you'd walk under palms in the Arctic. In the Eocene, you'd see whales with legs and bats first taking to the air. In the Miocene, you'd watch herds of horses running across endless plains. In the Pleistocene, you'd glimpse mammoths against ice sheets taller than skyscrapers. And in the Holocene, you'd recognize the seeds of our own world: rivers, grasslands, forests, but without roads, cities, or the hum of machines. Understanding the age of mammals is not only a scientific journey, but an act of perspective. It shows how all living beings are linked by survival, adaptation, and time. It also reminds us that Earth's conditions are not fixed. They oscillate, sometimes slowly, sometimes in jolts, and life must continually adjust. This awareness is part of what makes the Cenozoic such a rich source for reflection and for stories like this one. Seen as a whole, the Cenozoic is a record of how disruption creates opportunity. The asteroid that ended the dinosaurs opened ecological space for mammals. Shifts in continents and climates continually reshuffled habitats. The rise of grasslands forged a new style of life: fast-moving herds and pursuit predators. Ice ages forced resilience and migration, and the emergence of humans introduced culture, technology, and conscious environmental change into the evolutionary mix. The most striking theme is adaptability. Mammals learned to climb, swim, fly, dig, and run. They evolved echolocation, baleen filters, high-crowned teeth, social hunting strategies, and complex parental care. Birds grew to giant proportions on isolated continents, or shrank into specialized niches. Plants diversified from tropical forests to savannas to tundras, inventing strategies to store carbon, spread seeds, and survive fire or drought. All of these innovations trace back to the long, rolling experiment that began when the skies cleared after the asteroid impact. We also see how geography shapes destiny. Isolated continents produced their own caste of creatures, like Australia's marsupials, or South America's terror birds and giant sloths. When barriers fell, such as the rise of the Isthmus of Panama, faunal exchanges transformed ecosystems, driving extinctions and expansions alike. Ocean currents changed with these rearrangements, influencing global climate and marine biodiversity. In every case, Earth's surface and life were in dialogue, each responding to the other. The Cenozoic's fossil record captures these changes in exquisite detail. From pollen grains in sediments to teeth of early horses, from whale ear bones adapted to underwater hearing to footprints of mammoths on ancient plains, every layer of rock tells a story. Chemical signatures reveal greenhouse spikes, icehouse dips, and migrations of entire biomes. This archive allows scientists to reconstruct not just what species lived, but how they interacted, moved, and responded to planetary shifts. By studying these deep time patterns, we gain insight into today's changes. Rapid warming events like the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum offer analogs for modern climate change. The spread of grasslands and subsequent carbon drawdown shows how plants can reshape atmospheric chemistry. The repeated cycles of extinction and radiation demonstrate both the fragility and resilience of life. For humans, this perspective is invaluable. It reminds us that our actions unfold within Earth's larger rhythms, and that the consequences may last for millennia. If the Cenozoic could be summed up in one image, it would be a tapestry, woven from catastrophe and creativity. Each mass change, a meteor strike, a volcanic pulse, an ice surge, tears holes in the fabric, and life threads new patterns through the gaps. Over 66 million years, those threads have produced whales larger than any dinosaur, forests stretching into the Arctic, birds that can outrun horses, and finally, a species able to tell the story. Standing in the present and looking back across the Cenozoic, we can trace the lines that connect our everyday world to deep time. The grass beneath our feet carries genes shaped by ancient plains. The whales in our oceans echo the footsteps of land mammals that chose the water. Even the shape of our continents and climates reflects collisions and drifts, that began tens of millions of years ago. The Cenozoic is not just history, it is the foundation of the living Earth around us. One of the clearest lessons from this age is that change is the rule, not the exception. The lush Paleocene forests, the subtropical Eocene poles, the Miocene grasslands, the Pleistocene ice sheets, all of these worlds seemed stable to the creatures living in them, yet all were transient. Evolution responded in pulses, sometimes gradual, sometimes explosive, producing a richness of form and behavior unmatched in earlier eras. Mammals diversified into every size and strategy. Birds spread into every aerial niche. Flowering plants reshaped terrestrial food webs. Another lesson is how tightly climate, life, and geology intertwine. When mountain ranges rise, weather patterns shift. When forests spread, carbon levels fall. When oceans open or close, currents redirect heat and nutrients across the globe. Each feedback loop ripples through ecosystems, and life itself becomes a geologic force, altering soils, atmosphere, and even rock formation. The Cenozoic shows that biology and geology cannot be separated. They co-create the planet we inhabit. This perspective helps us understand our own impact. In just a geological instant, humans have altered landscapes, shifted species distributions, and released vast amounts of carbon dioxide, echoing events like the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum. Yet the fossil record also shows the potential for recovery and adaptation, though on timescales far longer than human lifespans. The resilience of life is real, but so is its vulnerability to rapid, large-scale change. If you imagine walking through a time-lapse of the Cenozoic, you would see continents drifting, forests advancing and retreating, grasslands spreading like green tides, glaciers grinding valleys, and waves of animals appearing and vanishing. You would watch mammals grow from mouse-sized survivors into rhinos taller than giraffes, whales heavier than any dinosaur, and finally, into humans lighting fires on the savanna. It is a film of experimentation, survival, and transformation, with no fixed endpoint, only ongoing change. Today, we live in the latest chapter of this story. Every plant, animal, and ecosystem is the product of Cenozoic trials and triumphs. Our species, too, is rooted here, in the primates that leapt through Eocene branches, in the early humans walking African plains, in the ingenuity forged by Ice Age pressures. We inherit not only genes but also ecological relationships, climatic rhythms, and geologic landscapes shaped across 66 million years. Understanding this lineage gives us both humility and agency. Humility because we are one branch on a vast tree. Agency because we can choose how we influence the next chapter. Seen through the lens of the entire Cenozoic, our present moment becomes both fragile and profound. The stable climate of the Holocene, just a few thousand years old, is an anomaly compared to the long swings of the past 66 million years. Forests have marched poleward and retreated. Deserts have expanded and shrunk. Ice has waxed and waned. Oceans have flooded and withdrawn from continents. Every landscape we consider normal today is a temporary arrangement built on ancient shifts. This deep-time view also reframes the origins of our own species. Bipedalism, large brains, and cooperative culture are not isolated traits, but extensions of Cenozoic trends. Flexible behavior in variable environments, social living for protection and resource sharing, and tool use as a way of exploiting new niches. Just as the first whales transformed their limbs into flippers to claim the sea, early humans transformed their hands and minds into instruments for reshaping the land. We can trace clear lineages, from the small tree-dwelling primates of the Paleocene and Eocene to the early hominins walking across patchy Miocene savannas, and finally, to modern humans inhabiting every biome. Our diets, physiology, and even our gut microbes still reflect this long apprenticeship under shifting climates, forests, and grasslands. Each innovation, bigger brains, upright posture, fire, language, was a response to pressures shaped by millions of years of planetary change. At the same time, the Cenozoic fossil record warns of limits. Many great lineages rose and fell as conditions shifted. Pantodonts, creodonts, giant sloths, terror birds, all flourished for millions of years and then disappeared. Even dominant groups like horses changed drastically, evolving multiple times into new forms as environments reconfigured. No adaptation is permanent, and no ecological role is guaranteed. The tapestry of life is always being rewoven. Yet this record also offers a sense of continuity and hope. Life repeatedly rebounded from upheaval, finding new ways to flourish in transformed worlds. The mammalian expansion after the asteroid impact, the spread of grasslands after global cooling, the diversification of primates and whales. Each episode shows the creative force of evolution, working with whatever survives. This resilience underpins the richness of the modern biosphere and may yet guide future recoveries. By holding the entire Cenozoic in mind, we gain perspective on our own choices. We are not outside this story, but inside it, shaping its current phase. Our cities, farms, and technologies are as much a product of deep time as mammoth tusks or whale flippers. The same processes, migration, adaptation, competition, cooperation, still govern us, though expressed through culture and technology rather than claws and teeth. Recognizing this continuity grounds us in the Earth system rather than apart from it. When we weave together all the strands of the Cenozoic, a portrait emerges of a planet in constant motion. Every epoch, Paleocene, Eocene, Oligocene, Miocene, Pliocene, Pleistocene, Holocene, has its own character, but none stands apart. Each is a chapter in a single unfolding narrative. Earth recovering from catastrophe, experimenting with new life, and shaping the conditions for the next transformation. The Paleocene opened with small nocturnal survivors and greenhouse climates. The Eocene brought tropical forests to the poles, whales with legs, and bats taking flight. The Oligocene and Miocene spread grasslands, forged grazers and pursuit predators, and cooled the poles into ice. The Pliocene saw the rise of modern ocean currents and the beginnings of glacial cycles. The Pleistocene unleashed ice ages, megafauna, and humanity's global spread. The Holocene stabilized just long enough for civilization to bloom. Each epoch still lives in the fossils under our feet, the DNA of living species, and the shapes of continents and seas. This long view reveals how every adaptation, hooves, tusks, baleen plates, echolocation, upright walking, is a response to an environment in flux. Even the plants we see as static, the grasses under a prairie sky, the trees of a rainforest, are products of ancient pressures and migrations. They carry in their tissues the history of climates and soils forged millions of years ago. It also shows how small beginnings can yield vast consequences. The first primates scurrying through Paleocene branches laid the groundwork for apes and humans. The first proto-whales wading in coastal shallows seeded the giants of today's oceans. Early grasses tucked into Eocene riverbanks became the engine of Miocene savannas. Tiny plankton flourishing after extinction events reshaped global carbon cycles. Our own future is likewise seeded in small choices and innovations. The carbon we emit, the habitats we fragment, the species we protect or erase, all ripple outward across time. The Cenozoic teaches that the Earth system will eventually rebalance, but the form of that balance depends on what survives the transition. Life will adapt, but not always in ways that favor our familiar companions or even our own species. And yet there is wonder in this continuity. Every breath we take passes through oxygen cycles established by ancient forests. Every coastline we walk is shaped by glacial pulses. Every bird in the sky descends from the dinosaurs that survived the asteroid impact. Every mammal we see is a cousin in the age of mammals, carrying the same legacy of resilience. By understanding this story, we see our place not as outside observers, but as participants in a living, evolving Earth. If you zoom out across the entire Cenozoic and watch Earth in time-lapse, the picture is breathtaking. Continents glide like slow rafts, oceans open and close, mountains rise like wrinkles on a living skin, forests bloom, retreat, and bloom again. Glaciers advance and melt back like great tides of ice. Against this backdrop, animals and plants experiment with form and behavior, appearing, thriving, and vanishing. The process is relentless, but creative, a planetary workshop refining life over tens of millions of years. One striking pattern is the feedback between climate and evolution. As climates warmed, forests spread, and tree-adapted mammals diversified. As climates cooled, grasslands replaced forests, and running grazers emerged. As ice ages arrived, thick-furred giants and migratory strategies evolved. Each environmental change rearranged the board, and evolution dealt a new hand of adaptations. The age of mammals is thus not a steady ascent, but a cycle of upheaval and renewal. Another pattern is the repeated expansion of mammals into the sea and sky. Whales began as walking hoofed creatures, but became oceanic titans. Seals and manatees followed different pathways back to water. Bats turned hands into wings and claimed the night skies. Each transition shows how flexible the mammalian body plan can be, echoing the reptilian dominance of land, sea, and air in the Mesozoic, but with a new cast of characters. Plants, too, reshaped the planet. Flowering plants evolved new fruits, seeds, and chemical defenses. Grasses transformed soil chemistry and carbon cycles. Trees and vines captured and stored energy in forests that became coal, oil, and soil. Pollinators, fungi, and decomposers formed intricate webs that stabilized these systems. This plant-animal partnership underpins every ecosystem we know, and its roots lie deep in the Cenozoic recovery from catastrophe. In this long story, extinctions are not failures, but inflection points. Pantodonts, terror birds, giant sloths, saber-toothed cats. Each dominated its stage and then disappeared, making way for new experiments. Survivors reoccupied the space and pushed evolution in new directions. Our own primate lineage benefited from such turnovers, rising during warm intervals, diversifying under forest canopies, and later adapting to open country as climates cooled. Today's world still reflects these dynamics. Rodents and bats remain hyper-successful. Whales dominate the seas, ungulates fill the grasslands, and primates continue to evolve under novel pressures. Even humanity's impact, urbanization, climate change, species translocation, echoes the same principles. Changing the stage reshapes the cast. The Cenozoic's legacy is not just the animals and plants we see, but the rules of the game they follow. To grasp this fully is to feel both humility and belonging. The ground we stand on, the air we breathe, the genes we carry, and the ideas we form are all parts of a continuum that stretches back to that quiet dawn after the asteroid. We are not separate from the age of mammals. We are its latest expression. Across the Cenozoic, one of the clearest threads is interconnection. No organism evolved in isolation. Plants, insects, mammals, and climates all co-shaped one another in feedback loops spanning millions of years. Forests gave mammals food and shelter. Mammals dispersed seeds and fertilized soils. Insects pollinated flowers and formed the base of food chains. Climate shifts directed migrations, extinctions, and bursts of innovation. Every adaptation was both a response and a contribution to a larger system. This interconnection is especially visible in the fossil record of coevolution. The rise of flowering plants parallels the diversification of pollinating insects. The spread of grasslands parallels the evolution of grazing teeth in mammals. The appearance of pursuit predators parallels the development of speed and herding in prey animals. Even ocean plankton and whales evolved together. Krill and filter-feeding giants scaling up in tandem. These paired changes show life as a web of relationships, not isolated threads. The Cenozoic also reveals how geography governs opportunity. Land bridges such as Beringia or the Isthmus of Panama periodically opened and closed, reshuffling species between continents. Mountain chains forced rain shadows, deserts, and monsoons. Isolated basins turned into evolutionary laboratories producing unique creatures. When these barriers fell, waves of migration and competition transformed ecosystems, sometimes triggering extinctions, sometimes sparking new radiations. This long perspective reframes our modern environmental challenges. Today, we see rapid climate change, fragmented habitats, and mass species movements, patterns that echo ancient shifts, but at unprecedented speed. The fossil record shows what such pressures can do. Dwarfing in mammals during heat spikes, mass dispersals across continents, abrupt extinctions of specialized species, and adaptive radiations among generalists. It also shows how long recovery can take, tens or hundreds of thousands of years, even for robust ecosystems. Yet the Cenozoic story is not only about upheaval, it is also about continuity. Many of the animal and plant lineages that arose early still persist. Rodents, bats, whales, primates, grasses, oaks, and countless others have endured all these swings by evolving quickly, maintaining genetic diversity, and exploiting multiple niches. They are living testaments to resilience across deep time. To walk through a modern landscape is to walk through a palimpsest of these histories. The prairie under your feet was seeded by Miocene grasses. The predator-prey dynamics of wolves and deer echo Pleistocene chases. The migratory instincts of birds trace routes opened by glacial retreats. Even our own restlessness, curiosity, and adaptability can be seen as the latest version of a Cenozoic survival strategy. In essence, the age of mammals is still underway. We are living inside it, contributing to its next chapter. Whether that chapter leads to new stability or another round of upheaval will depend in part on choices we make. But the larger lesson remains. Life endures by changing. Viewed from start to present, the Cenozoic is like a living archive, showing us how transformation builds complexity over time. Each epoch layered new ecosystems over the bones of the old, and each wave of extinction cleared the way for new experiments. From the ashes of the Cretaceous sprang forests of flowering plants. From the warm seas of the Eocene came whales and coral reefs. From the grasslands of the Miocene came the high-speed grazers and predators of open country. From the ice ages of the Pleistocene came a lineage of primates, hardened by variability and ready to spread across the globe. One of the quiet forces through all of this has been time itself. Evolution needs time to test ideas, to refine adaptations, to diversify lineages, but it also needs disruption to shake the board and reveal new paths. The Cenozoic's rhythm, millions of years of steady trends punctuated by abrupt shifts, provided both. This dance of stability and upheaval produced the modern biosphere, including us. Today, our own actions compress and accelerate these processes. Species translocations that once took millions of years now happen in decades. Climate shifts that once took thousands of years now unfold within a century. This acceleration does not erase the patterns of the Cenozoic, but magnifies them, reminding us how sensitive life is to rapid change and how enduring its creative potential can be if given room to adapt. Standing at this point in time, we can read the signatures of the age of mammals in everyday sights. The high-crowned teeth of grazing horses, a legacy of Miocene grasses. The social bonds of elephants, evolved over millions of years of family herds. The wings of bats, first unfurled in Eocene nights. The songs of birds, descended from survivors of the asteroid's shadow. Our own upright stride, forged in open savannas, shaped by cooling climates. The Cenozoic also invites us to think about deep reciprocity. The soils under our crops were enriched by ancient roots. The oil powering our cities formed from long-dead plankton. The fresh water we drink is shaped by glacial deposits. The climate we depend on is stabilized by processes that began with the uplift of mountain ranges tens of millions of years ago. We are not simply using Earth's resources. We are drawing from a vast bank account built over deep time. Recognizing this deep inheritance can change how we see our role. It can temper hubris with gratitude and expand our time horizon beyond a single lifetime or civilization. It can also rekindle a sense of wonder. Even the smallest insect on a summer evening carries in its body the echoes of mass extinctions, migrations, and adaptations that reach back to the Paleocene forests. In this way, the age of mammals is not merely a backdrop to human history, but its foundation. Our food, our technologies, our myths, and our imaginations are entwined with the legacy of the Cenozoic. To tell its story is to tell our own, not as a separate saga, but as the latest chapter in an epic 66 million years long. As we reach the edge of the present, the story of the Cenozoic begins to merge seamlessly with the story of now. The age of mammals is not some distant era locked in stone, but an ongoing chapter whose ink is still wet. Every decision we make, every field plowed, every forest cut or protected, every ton of carbon released, writes itself into this evolving narrative. We are no longer passive passengers, but active authors of Earth's next experiment. To understand our place in this long arc, imagine Earth without us. The continents would still drift, ice would still wax and wane, and species would still rise and fall, but at a much slower pace. By accelerating change, we are testing the resilience of systems forged over millions of years. This test is unprecedented, not because Earth cannot recover, it always has, but because the recovery may look nothing like the world we inherited. This recognition gives both urgency and possibility. If life could rebound after an asteroid impact, after greenhouse spikes, after ice ages, it can adapt to our impact too, given time, diversity, and space. By preserving habitats, reducing emissions, and supporting biodiversity, we can act as stewards rather than disruptors, extending the age of mammals into new forms rather than cutting it short. The Cenozoic also teaches humility about control. No species has ever truly dominated Earth for long. Even the dinosaurs eventually yielded to disaster and change. Our technological reach does not exempt us from the same ecological principles. Food webs, energy flows, climate feedbacks. These remain the scaffolding of life, and our survival depends on them as surely as any Paleocene mammal or Miocene horse. Yet there is also wonder in this moment. We are the first beings to reconstruct the full sweep of the Cenozoic, to read the rocks, measure the isotopes, and piece together a 66-million-year biography of our planet. We are both actors in and historians of this story. This dual role can deepen our sense of connection. We belong to a lineage of survivors and innovators stretching back to the dawn after the asteroid. If you close your eyes and picture the entire age of mammals, you might see a mosaic. Warm forests glowing in Arctic light, whales with vestigial limbs rolling through tropical seas, herds of horses thundering across Miocene plains, mammoths under auroras on the Mammoth Steppe, and humans lighting fires at the close of the Ice Age. All of it flowing together, a living continuum rather than discrete scenes. In the end, the Cenozoic is a story of persistence. Life did not simply endure. It thrived, diversified, and reinvented itself again and again. Its lessons are etched into every ecosystem we see and every cell we carry. To learn those lessons is to glimpse not only the past, but the possible futures that still lie ahead. As our view stretches from the first dawn of the Cenozoic into the living present, we can begin to see patterns not only in biology and climate, but also in meaning. The age of mammals is a testament to continuity through change, to the power of survival and reinvention. Each extinction, each migration, each adaptation is a thread in a vast weaving whose full picture only becomes clear across tens of millions of years. In this grand fabric, even familiar things acquire new resonance. The grasses that feed our livestock are descendants of Miocene pioneers. The predators we fear or admire echo Pleistocene hunters. The ocean currents that shape our weather formed during tectonic reshuffles millions of years old. The oxygen we breathe cycles through plants whose ancestors colonized land long before mammals existed. When we understand this continuity, our everyday world becomes an extension of deep time rather than a departure from it. Another perspective the Cenozoic offers is that of scale. 100,000 years, which seems vast to us, is a heartbeat in this narrative. Species rise and vanish across millions of years. Climate pulses can last for hundreds of millennia. Ice sheets can advance and retreat dozens of times. Against this backdrop, our own history, from the first cities to the present, is a flicker. Yet that flicker can carry enormous power because of its speed. We compress change that once took eons into centuries or decades. The record of the age of mammals also shows how innovation spreads. Once one lineage evolves a breakthrough, flight in bats, baleen in whales, upright walking in hominins, other groups respond, ecosystems shift, and new possibilities open. This is evolution's equivalent of invention, and it echoes how human culture innovates today. Each new technology changes the landscape, forcing adaptation and reshaping the flow of resources, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. Finally, the Cenozoic reminds us that while extinction is inevitable, life's capacity for renewal is equally inexhaustible. We are surrounded by descendants of survivors, each with a story of adaptation, resilience, and chance. Our own presence here, listening, thinking, imagining, is proof of that lineage. This sense of belonging can foster not despair at change, but awe at the forces that made us possible. To stand at the threshold of the future with this awareness is to hold a kind of double vision, seeing both the fragility of ecosystems in the short term and the creative resilience of life in the long term. This double vision can inform how we act, what we preserve, and how we imagine our place in Earth's unfolding story. As the narrative of the Cenozoic reaches the present moment, it invites reflection on what it means to be a species aware of deep time. For most of Earth's history, life simply reacted to changing climates and shifting continents. Only in the last heartbeat of geological time has one species gained the capacity to read that history, model the future, and deliberately intervene. This awareness transforms the age of mammals from a backdrop into a living context, a stage we both inherit and influence. Looking back, we see that the traits that carried mammals through upheaval, flexibility, parental care, complex sociality, diverse diets, and adaptive intelligence are the same traits that enabled primates and eventually humans to thrive. Looking forward, we can ask how those same qualities might guide us now. Cooperation over conflict, innovation over stagnation, stewardship over exploitation. The fossil record does not prescribe these choices, but it shows the consequences of environmental stress and the power of adaptability. We also see how intimately connected we are to other species. The pollinators that sustain our crops are descendants of Eocene insects. The fish in our seas share ancestry with lineages shaped by Miocene currents. The predators and prey of our savannas echo Pleistocene interactions. When we disrupt these relationships, we tug at threads that have been woven for tens of millions of years. When we restore them, we renew patterns of resilience honed over deep time. The Cenozoic reminds us that no boundary between nature and culture truly exists. Our cities rise on sediments deposited by ancient seas. Our technologies rely on minerals forged in tectonic collisions. Our food depends on photosynthesis, refined through eons. Even our imaginations draw on archetypes older than our species. The mammoth in the snow, the whale in the deep, the endless grassland under migrating herds. These images resonate because they are part of our evolutionary inheritance. To live with this awareness is to live in dialogue with the past. Each decision about land use, energy, or conservation becomes a line written into the next chapter of a 66 million year story. We are not separate authors, but characters whose actions alter the plot. Whether that plot bends toward mass loss or renewed flourishing depends partly on how we apply what the Cenozoic has taught us about change, connection, and endurance. In this way, the age of mammals is more than a scientific period. It is a mirror. It shows us our origins, our dependencies, our potential, and our limits. It shows that resilience is not passive, but active, forged by engagement with a changing world. And it shows that life's creativity far exceeds any single catastrophe, even the ones we cause. As our exploration of the Cenozoic draws closer to the present, the lines between past, present, and future blur. We stand not at the end of a story, but at a hinge point where everything we've learned from deep time can be applied to the choices we make today. The age of mammals has shown again and again that survival belongs to the adaptable, the interconnected, and the resilient. When we study the fossil record, we also study ourselves. The evolutionary pressures that shaped mammals, variable climates, shifting landscapes, competition, cooperation, still operate on us, even if the stage now includes cities, technologies, and global networks. Our nervous systems, our instincts, our social behaviors are tuned to conditions forged over millions of years. Recognizing this can help us understand why we respond to risk, opportunity, and community the way we do. Another lesson is humility about permanence. No epoch, no climate regime, no dominant species lasts forever. The Cenozoic began with small nocturnal mammals in a greenhouse world and went on to produce whales larger than any dinosaur and humans capable of visiting the moon. Yet every form is transient. The fossil record preserves not only the triumphs, but also the disappearances, showing that extinction is the rule and persistence the exception. Yet from this impermanence arises a kind of freedom. If change is inevitable, then creativity matters. The Cenozoic is filled with lineages that reinvented themselves. Fish becoming amphibians, land mammals becoming whales, primates becoming bipedal toolmakers. In our own time, we can reinvent our relationships with each other and the planet, drawing on the same flexibility that has carried life through countless upheavals. This deep perspective also nourishes awe. To imagine the world of the Paleocene with crocodiles in the Arctic, the Eocene with palm trees near the poles, the Miocene with forests giving way to endless grass, the Pleistocene with mammoths under auroras, is to see Earth as a living, breathing entity, far more dynamic than our daily experience suggests. It shifts our scale of attention from decades to millennia, from cities to continents, from individuals to lineages. And so, as we continue this journey through the age of mammals, we are not simply recounting distant epochs, but cultivating a mindset, a way of seeing our place in time. Each epoch's lesson becomes a tool for thinking about sustainability, resilience, and adaptation now. Each vanished species is a cautionary tale and a reminder of life's creative power. Each fossil is both a relic and a mirror, reflecting possibilities for our own future. As we press further into the present moment, the age of mammals becomes less like a museum of vanished forms and more like a living framework holding our world together. All around us are lineages that began in the early Cenozoic, quietly persisting through shifting climates and continents. Each bird call at dawn, each mammal footprint in soil, each flowering plant bending to the wind is a continuation of that deep time story. Looking back across the epochs, we can see a rhythm: catastrophe, recovery, innovation. The asteroid cleared the stage, mammals multiplied, the hothouse world cooled, grasslands emerged, ice sheets advanced, megafauna adapted or vanished. Humans arrived and reshaped the land. This rhythm has no single conductor, but it yields patterns recognizable across scales, pulses of extinction, followed by radiations of new life, slow drifts punctuated by sudden shifts. Understanding this rhythm can help us situate our own time. We are not living after the age of mammals, but within it, in a moment of intense transition, comparable to the great shifts of the past. Our technologies, cities, and migrations echo the same forces that have always moved life: energy capture, niche expansion, competition, cooperation, but amplified and accelerated by culture. In this sense, humanity is a new evolutionary experiment, testing whether intelligence and foresight can moderate the forces of disruption rather than merely react to them. The Cenozoic also reframes what we mean by stability. The stable Holocene climate that nurtured agriculture is itself a brief interlude between ice ages. The forests we take as ancient are recent regrowth since glacial retreat. Even the coastlines we map are provisional, drawn by sea levels that will inevitably rise or fall. This impermanence can feel unsettling, but also liberating. It reveals that change is not a failure of the system, but its defining feature. When we absorb this lesson, our sense of place and time expands. We can see ourselves not as owners of nature, but as participants in a 66 million year unfolding drama. We can understand that every decision, from protecting a wetland to planting a tree to reducing emissions, is part of a cascade of causes and effects stretching far beyond our lifetimes. And we can draw strength from the fact that life's creativity is greater than any one crisis, including the ones we create. If the age of mammals had a final message, it might be this: resilience is built from diversity, connectivity, and adaptation. Those traits carried mammals from the shadow of the asteroid to the present day. They can carry us forward too, if we choose to cultivate them, not only in ecosystems, but in our societies, economies, and imaginations. As the age of mammals continues into our own time, its lessons become more immediate. We can look to the past to understand thresholds, moments when systems tipped, species migrated, or climates crossed new boundaries. These thresholds were rarely singular events, but cascades of interactions, like dominoes falling over thousands of years. Today, we are approaching similar thresholds, but at speeds unseen in deep time. This awareness can sharpen our ability to steer rather than drift. In the fossil record, adaptability is written not just in anatomy, but in behavior. Mammals that diversified diets, explored new habitats, or formed complex social groups often fared better during upheavals. This pattern resonates with human history. Cultures that diversify food sources, share knowledge widely, and cooperate across boundaries can withstand shocks more effectively. The Cenozoic shows us the power of flexibility as a survival trait, applicable not only to species, but to societies. We can also see how feedbacks amplify small changes. The uplift of the Himalayas altered atmospheric circulation and drew down carbon dioxide, which cooled the planet and expanded grasslands. The formation of the Isthmus of Panama redirected ocean currents, intensifying ice ages. Likewise, human activities, deforestation, greenhouse gas emissions, species introductions, set off feedbacks that ripple through climate, oceans, and food webs. These parallels underscore our need to think in systems rather than in isolated problems. Even as we acknowledge the disruptions of the present, we can draw hope from the Cenozoic record of resilience. After each crisis, asteroid impact, thermal maximum, ice age, life rebounded in unexpected ways. New lineages arose, new ecosystems formed, and diversity returned, though always in a transformed pattern. This recovery took time, but it happened, repeatedly, demonstrating life's capacity for self-renewal when given space and time. This perspective can also deepen our emotional connection to Earth. To walk through a forest or along a shoreline is to step into a continuum stretching back millions of years. Each tree, each wave, each bird call carries an echo of ancient processes. This sense of lineage can inspire a stewardship rooted not in guilt or fear, but in kinship, a recognition that our well-being is inseparable from the systems that sustain all life. The age of mammals is thus more than a scientific framework. It is a worldview. It shows that the planet is dynamic, interlinked, and creative. It shows that adaptability and cooperation are powerful forces. And it shows that even after profound loss, life can surge again in new and unanticipated forms. By internalizing these lessons, we can act not as passive witnesses, but as informed participants in Earth's ongoing story. If we let the Cenozoic guide our imagination, we see Earth not as a static stage, but as a living, shifting canvas. Continents drift, climates oscillate, species migrate, and ecosystems reassemble. This constant motion does not erase the past, but layers it into the present, like ghostly fingerprints in soils, genes, and coastlines. Each living thing today carries a record of these shifts, whether in its anatomy, its behavior, or its DNA. From this perspective, every action we take, building a city, planting a forest, preserving a wetland, becomes a geologic act. We are adding our own layer to the strata that future beings might read. In a sense, our roads, dams, and plastics are as much a part of the Earth system as coral reefs or volcanic ash layers. This realization can expand our sense of responsibility. If the age of mammals continues, what will our layers say about us? We can also use deep time as a tool for resilience. Just as early primates survived in forest refuges during cooling events, or early ungulates migrated to new pastures during drying trends, we can create refuges of biodiversity and corridors for migration to help species adapt to current changes. By mimicking natural strategies, diversity, redundancy, connectivity, we can soften the impact of rapid shifts. In this way, the age of mammals becomes a manual for living on a restless planet. It tells us that diversity cushions shocks, that mobility allows survival, and that cooperative behaviors can flourish under stress. These lessons are as relevant to ecosystems as to economies and cultures. We may not control the larger forces of tectonics or solar cycles, but we can shape our response, just as mammals did after the asteroid impact. The Cenozoic also underscores the value of perspective. Our news cycles focus on days or years, but ecosystems function on decades to centuries, and evolution operates on millennia. When we zoom out, patterns emerge, feedbacks, thresholds, recoveries that are invisible up close. This shift of scale can temper panic and sharpen foresight, enabling decisions that align with Earth's deeper rhythms. Finally, by seeing ourselves as part of the age of mammals, we reconnect with a vast lineage of survivors. We stop viewing nature as other and begin to see it as family. This shift in identity can inspire a different kind of action, not extraction or domination, but reciprocity and care. It is not a romantic notion, but an evolutionary insight. Mutualism and cooperation have been as powerful in shaping life as competition and predation. The Cenozoic, then, is not a closed book, but an unfolding epic. We are writing its latest verses, drawing on millions of years of innovation, resilience, and adaptation. Understanding this epic can give us both humility and courage as we step into the uncharted future. As we move deeper into the 21st century, the echoes of the Cenozoic reverberate ever more clearly. Our climate models, biodiversity maps, and conservation strategies all draw upon the lessons of deep time. We know from the fossil record that rapid warming events triggered dwarfing in mammals, that fragmented habitats impeded recovery, and that diverse ecosystems rebounded more quickly after crises. These lessons are not abstract. They are guideposts for navigating our own turbulent era. One striking pattern visible throughout the age of mammals is the importance of refugia, safe havens where species persist during harsh conditions. During ice ages, forests retreated to pockets in warmer valleys. During heat spikes, cool uplands preserved temperate species. After each crisis, these refugia seeded recolonization. In the modern world, protected areas, wildlife corridors, and seed banks can serve a similar function, acting as anchors for recovery in a changing climate. Another pattern is the power of connectivity. When land bridges formed, species exchanged genes and reinvigorated lineages. When oceans opened, currents redistributed nutrients and heat. Connectivity allowed flexibility and innovation, while isolation produced uniqueness, but also vulnerability. Today, we fragment landscapes with roads and fences, but we can also rebuild connections with corridors, green roofs, and rewilding projects. The age of mammals shows that connection is as vital as diversity. We can also draw inspiration from the adaptability of life forms themselves. Over 66 million years, mammals evolved flight, aquatic life, echolocation, complex social systems, and enormous size variations. Birds colonized every niche from alpine tundra to open ocean. Plants invented strategies to resist grazing, store carbon, and colonize disturbed ground. This kaleidoscope of adaptation demonstrates that the living world is not static, but endlessly creative. A message especially relevant at a time when human activity is reshaping conditions faster than ever before. To hold the age of mammals in our minds is to hold a map of possibility. It is a reminder that nothing on Earth exists in isolation, and that every action we take joins a web of feedbacks stretching across time and space. It is also a call to humility and imagination. Humility because our species is young. Imagination because we can choose paths informed by deep history rather than blind to it. The Cenozoic continues around us. In the migration of birds, the behavior of whales, the growth of forests, and the quiet evolution of species adapting to urban environments. We are living in a dynamic chapter, and future generations will look back on our time as one of many inflection points. What they inherit will depend on what survives our own upheavals, just as our world was shaped by the survivors of past cataclysms. In considering the age of mammals as an ongoing story, we see that each epoch is not an isolated chapter, but a ripple extending forward. The Paleocene's small insect-eating mammals set the stage for primates and ungulates. The Eocene's whales with legs set the stage for modern cetaceans. The Miocene's grasses and open habitats shaped our savannas and agricultural fields. The Pleistocene's ice ages forged the resilience and ingenuity of our ancestors. Each moment contributed ingredients to the world we now inhabit. This deep continuity also gives us a sense of scale. Human civilization has existed for only a sliver of the Holocene, yet we are drawing upon resources formed across millions of years. Oil from plankton-rich seas, soils from glacial grinding, biodiversity from countless evolutionary experiments. Understanding this time depth can cultivate gratitude and caution, reminding us that what seems abundant may actually be finite, and that replenishing it takes far longer than depleting it. The fossil record reveals not only dramatic transformations, but also quiet stability. Certain lineages have remained relatively unchanged. Sharks in the oceans, crocodiles in rivers, ginkgo trees on land. Their persistence shows that sometimes the winning strategy is not constant reinvention, but finding a stable niche. Yet even these living fossils have weathered multiple crises and shifted their ranges in response to change. Stability in deep time is never absolute. Another lesson we can take is the creative interplay between life and environment. Mammalian evolution altered vegetation through grazing and seed dispersal. Vegetation altered climate through carbon storage. Climate influenced erosion and mountain building through rainfall patterns. Tectonics influenced ocean currents, which in turn shaped marine biodiversity. This feedback web reveals Earth as a co-evolving system, not a backdrop for organisms, but a partner in shaping them. Our own species is now part of this co-evolution. We modify vegetation, move species across continents, and change the chemistry of atmosphere and oceans. We are participating in feedbacks once driven only by geology and biology. This can feel overwhelming, but it also offers agency. By understanding the loops, we can intervene more wisely. The age of mammals also illuminates the role of chance. A lineage's survival may hinge on being in the right place at the right time during a climate swing or mass extinction. Innovations may arise from random mutations that later become transformative. This unpredictability is why diversity matters. A wide portfolio of traits increases the odds that some will thrive under future conditions. For humans, Cultural diversity may serve a similar role, offering multiple pathways of adaptation. Ultimately, the Cenozoic story is one of constant becoming. There is no fixed endpoint, only transitions. Recognizing this can free us from nostalgia for a pristine past, and instead motivate us to shape a resilient future grounded in deep understanding. When we frame our own time as part of the age of mammals, we gain a vantage point that stretches across millions of years instead of decades. This long view softens panic and clarifies responsibility. It shows that while Earth has endured countless upheavals, the form of its recovery always depends on what survives. Species, ecosystems, and cultures that persist through disruption become the seeds of the next world. Throughout the Cenozoic, survival favored those that could exploit new opportunities. After the asteroid, mammals diversified into niches left vacant by dinosaurs. When forests shrank, grazers and pursuit predators evolved. When ice ages advanced, thick-furred giants roamed new steppes. This repeated pattern, loss followed by expansion, reveals how dynamic and inventive life can be when faced with change. It also underscores how catastrophic losses can permanently close off unique evolutionary pathways. For humans, this means that conservation is not merely about protecting the past, but about seeding the future. By maintaining diversity in genes, species, and cultures, we keep open a wider range of possibilities for adaptation. By restoring degraded habitats and reconnecting fragmented landscapes, we echo the ancient land bridges and refugia that once enabled survival. By reducing the pace of change, we give ecosystems time to respond. These actions align with strategies that have worked for life for tens of millions of years. Another insight from the Cenozoic is the power of small beginnings. Tiny changes in climate triggered shifts in vegetation that cascaded into animal evolution. Small populations migrating across a new corridor seeded entire faunal turnovers. In our own time, small conservation actions, protecting a wetland, reintroducing a predator, planting corridors, can trigger disproportionately large recoveries. The web of life is sensitive not only to destruction, but also to restoration. We can also find inspiration in the adaptability of our own lineage. The same flexibility that allowed early primates to thrive in forests, savannas, and variable climates can guide us now. Our ability to plan, cooperate, and innovate is not an escape from nature, but an expression of traits honed during the age of mammals. When we use those traits to foster resilience rather than overreach, we align ourselves with the deepest patterns of life on Earth. Finally, the Cenozoic offers a sense of belonging. We are not an intrusion into a static nature, but the latest expression of a 66 million year experiment in complexity. Our technologies, cities, and stories are as much a part of Earth's unfolding as the coral reef or the prairie. Recognizing this kinship can shift our narrative from domination to participation, from short-term gain to long-term stewardship. Standing at this point in the age of mammals, we can see our era as both culmination and transition. The traits that carried mammals from the shadow of the asteroid, flexibility, diversity, sociality, remain our best allies today. The same forces that reshaped continents, currents, and climates still act, but now our species adds a new layer of feedback. This realization can deepen both our humility and our agency. We cannot halt Earth's dynamism, but we can influence how we and other species move through it. Deep time shows that even the largest patterns start with small steps. The drift of continents that raised the Himalayas began as millimeters per year. The evolution of whales from land mammals began with tentative forays into shallow water. The spread of grasses began in small patches by rivers. Likewise, the future of biodiversity may hinge on thousands of local actions: wetlands restored, corridors planted, emissions reduced, not a single grand gesture. We also see from the Cenozoic how crises reshape opportunity. Volcanic pulses, meteor strikes, ice ages, each tore open ecosystems, but also created new habitats and niches. The survivors were often generalists, pioneers, and innovators. This pattern suggests that fostering adaptability, genetic, behavioral, cultural, may be more effective than trying to preserve static conditions. We cannot freeze the world in place, but we can help it flow in directions that sustain life. Another thread is the importance of memory. Geological strata record past climates. DNA holds ancient adaptations. Cultures carry stories about landscapes and species. This memory allows life to anticipate change, not consciously, but through inherited traits and traditions. By studying and preserving this memory, in fossils, seeds, genomes, and indigenous knowledge, we strengthen the bridge between past and future. Finally, the Cenozoic offers us a vocabulary for hope rooted in realism. Life will not return to some lost Eden, but it can unfold into new forms if given time and space. Diversity, connectivity, and flexibility are the engines of this creativity. By aligning our policies, economies, and values with these engines, we can become co-authors of a future as rich and surprising as the past 66 million years. To embrace this perspective is to live with a wider horizon. It is to see every landscape, every species, and every choice as part of a planetary story still being written. A story in which we are not merely observers, but participants with a say in the plot. The age of mammals, far from ending, is alive in every heartbeat, migration, and germinating seed around us. And so our long journey through the age of mammals comes to an end. From the quiet dawn after the dinosaurs' extinction to the bustling modern world, we have traced 66 million years of transformation. Forests rising and retreating, oceans reshaping, grasslands spreading, ice advancing, and life reinventing itself again and again. Each epoch has left its fingerprints on the earth we inhabit today, and on us, the latest mammals to inherit its legacy. Thank you for traveling across deep time with us tonight. We hope you felt the pulse of evolution and the resilience of life, and that you now see your own world through the lens of a much larger story. If you enjoyed this exploration, please like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is for you. We love hearing from our global community of curious minds. This has been Journey Through Time. Until our next voyage, may your nights be calm, your dreams full of discovery, and your imagination wander freely through the landscapes of history. Good night, and thank you for being part of our journey.